morning, children. We are the Cape Ann Symphony. Well, not the entire Cape Ann Symphony, but members of the Cape Ann Symphony. My name is Susanna Powers. I am one of the violinists. And we would like to start the program by playing a piece for you. But we're not going to tell you what piece it is. When we're done playing, I will ask you if you've ever heard it before and if you know who wrote it. I see one hand in the front. Who wrote this piece? Beethoven. Yes, Beethoven. Very nice. And do you know what it is called? Say it again. Yes, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Very good. You have good ears. So welcome to this program. I would like to introduce to you Mr. Alan Horlock. He's our concertmaster, and he will talk to you about what his job is in the Cape Ann Symphony.
Well, my job in the symphony is to, one of them is several jobs, but I'm in charge of the violins, the first violins. We're going to be divided into two sections of violins. When you come into the auditorium next week, you'll see the stage on your left will be about two sets of first violins and then seconds. Mrs. Powers leads the second violins, and she plays mostly the harmony, and we play mostly the melody line. You probably just heard something similar to that when we just played. But one of the very first things that I do is to stand up and quiet the orchestra. We'll be warming up when you walk in. You'll hear all this crazy sounds, everybody fooling around and getting their instruments warmed up to the atmosphere. And then I'll stand up and the whole orchestra will quiet down. I feel kind of powerful I can do that just by standing up. But anyway, I'll ask the first oboe player, but today we don't have oboe. I'll ask Mr. Benjamin to give us a tuning note, and we'll tune all the winds and the brasses. When they're done, we get another one for all the strings. Now you probably noticed that we have about maybe 25 or more violins, and we have to have that number to balance off the wind and brass instruments. The strings are much softer. I mean, we're not quite as powerful as a trumpet player, for instance. So we need to have a lot of us to balance that off so we can be heard. Now, the violin is, you probably have seen a violin. Anybody play strings here? Anybody violin players? Or cello, or viola, or bass? No, that's too bad. Well, I started violin way back in the Salem Public Schools when I was in the 5th grade, and I've been playing for over 60 years and love every minute of it. So the instrument is very basic. It's a hollow box, but a very special hollow box. But the shape of this instrument has been like this for many, many years. Mrs. Powers' instrument, for instance, is, what year is it?
1691.
Can you imagine that? And this one was built especially for me in 1990, so it's not even 30 years old. But and they're exactly the same in shape, so they lasted for centuries. That's how it is. But it's a simple instrument, but not all that easy to play. One of the problems is finding the right spot on this fingerboard to put your fingers. If I played Twinkle, Twinkle, didn't put them in the right spot. Doesn't sound like the same song, huh, but... So basically, the instrument's played with a bow. What is this white stuff on there? Do anybody know what that is? Yes, good. You know that. Horsehair, these, about 200 of these hairs, and it has little, they all, each, if you saw it under a microscope, these hairs have little tiny hooks on them, like little, I don't know what you want to call it, but clips. Yeah, little tiny, tiny hooks, and that's what grips the string to cause it to vibrate through this, called the bridge, through this hollow box. There's also a post standing up, and you talk about this. That's what gives it the sound. We have 4 strings. You'll see also in the orchestra, on the other side of the conductor, will be these other instruments where they're so huge they have to sit down. What are those called?
Cellos.
Cellos, right. We have about 8 of those. They don't have the high notes that we have. They have a much lower, they're more like, almost like a bass sound. And behind them, the big guys that stand up, what are those called? Yeah, stand-up bass or string bass, contrabass, different names. And then inside of the cellos, there's another instrument that looks like this, but it's a little bit bigger.
Viola?
Yeah. Boy, good for you. The viola that has these strings, but one lower. It's referred to as an alto. Just like in a chorus, you have sopranos and altos. So that's the violin, and we're going to play a little something for you, and Mrs. Powers will tell you more about what her job is.
Yes, I brought you a violin. Mr. Horlick mentioned a little bit that the violin is a hollow box, and I had an old violin, not a valuable old violin, but a junky old violin at home, and I took the back off so you can see inside what the violin looks like when you take the back off. The back would be typically glued on, just real special glue, but normal glue, all around the edges. Inside the violin is a little stick. This is the sound post, and this is how it works. When the string vibrates, the vibrations of the string make the bridge vibrate as well. Under the bridge is this little stick inside the violin. Can you see how it would be if the violin was closed? This stick transfers the vibrations onto the back of the violin, and now you have a sound. If we don't have the back or the stick, it sounds like this. Now this is only like half a violin. Not very beautiful, right? You can't make an orchestra with these kind of sounds. So that is, without this little stick in the middle, you really got nothing beautiful. Now, the job of a second violinist is to make the first violin sound richer and bigger. So oftentimes the first violins play melody very, very nicely, beautiful, up high, and the second violins might play the same melody lower, and that makes the first violin sound bigger and richer. Sometimes our job is to play harmony. You've heard the word harmony. It means when something fits together nicely and it sounds very beautiful. Listen to this. Did you hear how the second violins make the melody more beautiful? Sometimes we have a dialogue or a conversation with our first violins, not with our words, but with our notes. So the first violin might play a few notes, and then we play first a few notes. And then it goes back to them, and then it comes back to me. So we alternate. The music goes back and forth. Listen to this. good. Did you hear how the melody goes back and forth? And so we fill in each other's gaps. And now, please welcome Janet Harrison with her shiny, very impressive instrument.
So does anybody know what this is called? What is it?
French horn.
Very good. Do you know what family it belongs to in the music world? Yes, way in the back. Brass family. What's another brass instrument?
Trumpet.
Trumpet. Another one?
Trombone.
Trombone. And there's one more. Anybody over here know it? What do you think it is? Well, that's kind of a trumpet. One more. What's this? No? How about in the back?
Tuba.
Tuba. Very good. The saxophone. Somebody brought up the saxophone. It is this color. But what's different is brass instruments use a mouthpiece, and they're different sizes depending on the size of the instrument. The saxophone uses a reed, like a clarinet, so that would make it a member of the woodwind family. We'll talk about that a little later. So, to make a sound on the French horn, we have to use our lips to make a vibration. Now, if you do this very gently, please do not spit on your neighbors. I want you to buzz your lips. You're going to go... And you can feel your lips vibrating. Okay, you can stop. So when I do that and blow into the horn, I'm going to get a sound. Now, a lot of people ask me, why do I put my hand here? This is the bell. And it's a very simple reason. I have to put it somewhere. I don't need it to play the horn, to make the different keys go down. So it helps me hold the horn. So I put it like this when I'm playing. And it helps me hold up the horn so it doesn't fall down. Now, you're going to see us in the orchestra way in the back. There's going to be the French horns, then the trumpets, the trombones, and then the tuba will be next to the double basses because they both play the lowest notes in the music that we perform for you. Now, one more thing I want to show you. If you were to take this horn and stretch it out into one long tube, how many feet do you think it would be? Somebody over here. How many feet?
10.
Pretty close. What do you think? Getting closer. One more guess. I'm asking the fourth graders because you were here last year. What do you think? 15. That's about right. And I have something to show you. This is my hose horn. I made this out of a piece of tube that's about 15 feet long and a funnel. Mr. Benjamin's going to help me. All right. So if we were to stretch it out, this is about 15 feet long. So if I didn't have this all twisted up, it would be really hard to play by myself. I'd need a friend to help me. I can take the mouthpiece, put it in the end. It's hard to control because I don't have any keys to push down. Let's try rolling it up. If we roll it up and make it kind of the shape of a French horn. Okay. So
Studied for years.
now it kind of looks like a horn. I put the mouthpiece in. It's still going to work the same. Put my hand in the bell. But it doesn't sound as nice as the horn that I play for the orchestra. Now we're going to move on to the flute.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Benjamin and I are going to talk about the woodwind family this morning. I'm specifically going to speak about the flute, but before I do that, I have a couple of questions. So the flute is part of the woodwind family, and there are 3 other instruments in our family that are typically in the symphony orchestra. Let's see if someone knows. You in the blue shirt? Yep. The clarinet, fabulous. That's one of them. I'm thinking of 2 more. You guys probably know. I'm going to stick with the 4th graders for now. Oh, thank you. Yep. Yep. The saxophone, that's a super good guess, but it's not one of the typical instruments in the symphony orchestra. But you're right, it's a woodwind, so that's not wrong. It's not wrong per se. Yep, in the back, very back.
Oboe.
The oboe, fabulous. Now we're looking for one more, the big one, that one has to sit on a chair to play it. It's so big. Yep.
Cello.
Oh, that's a string instrument. Let's give one more guess and then I'll tell you if you don't know. It's really big. In the green? Not the saxophone. It's the, let's see if a fifth grader knows. That's okay. It's called the bassoon. The bassoon. And you'll learn a lot about that instrument in Peter and the Wolf. Let me talk a little bit about our woodwind instruments. And I'm going to start by just holding up this. Raise your hand super quietly if you've played this one before. I think most of you have either played it or know what it is. This is fabulous. That's fabulous. That's when I started playing as well. Our woodwind instruments in the symphony orchestra are all very similar to this in one respect. They all are a hollow tube, as your recorder was and is. They have holes in them that are either covered by your fingers or keys, and then we add air to a mouthpiece of some kind to get the pitch to change. Now, in the case of the recorder, you all know what that sounds like. So as the air has further to travel down the tube, because I close holes, the pitch gets lower. And that is how all of our woodwind instruments work. Now I'm going to speak about the flute for a moment, because that's my instrument. This is my mouthpiece on the flute. Now if I blew into it like I blow into a recorder, what do you think would happen? Well, I'll show you what would happen. Not very musical, is it? Pretty boring. So I have to make my lips the mouthpiece on a flute. And if any of you have ever blown across the top of a bottle and gotten that foghorny hooey sound, that's the same shape I make with my lips to get a sound out of the flute. Now I know we have a flute player in the front row here. Any other flute players in the room? Awesome. That's super. So you guys will know this already, but I'm going to show you. I blow instead of into the mouthpiece across the hole like you would on a bottle. And I'm going to show you what it sounds like. Now, the flute in the symphony orchestra would be like the violin section, where the very top of the range as far as how high the notes go. We often have to play the melody. We often have to play really kind of fast, shimmery things that sound very brilliant, whether it would be like a cascading waterfall or maybe a shower of stars, or in the case of Peter and the Wolf, I have to act and sound like a bird. Hopefully not act like a bird. I'd rather not try to do that, but I'll sound like a bird. But this is what the flute sounds like. Is one of my higher notes. Then it can go all the way down there. So it has a pretty big range, but we mostly play in the high register. Now I want you just for a second to close your eyes. Close your eyes and imagine that it's spring and it's about maybe 80 degrees moving into summer. You're sitting outside under a tree and there's a little bird in the tree. And I want to see if you think this sounds at all like a bird chirping. You'll hear more of it later, but see if this sounds like a chirp to you. You can open your eyes now. Did you hear that as a bird? Did that sound bird-like? Kind of? All right, well, the jury's out on that. Mr. Prokofiev hoped it sounded like a bird. But there's a little bit more to the chirp than that, which you'll get to hear soon. Now, before I end and turn it over to Mr. Benjamin, I want to show you the flute's little cousin, which is the piccolo. Some of the flute players might know that. The piccolo is made of a wood, the same wood that a clarinet and an oboe would be made out of, and it's super, super high. So someone would use a piccolo in the orchestra if the flute doesn't go high enough. We say bright, but it's very loud and it goes very high. And it's a fun instrument to play because for its size, you'd think, oh, probably not that powerful in the orchestra. But it's so loud and so high that I can play one note while the full orchestra is playing and everybody would know that I was playing as well. So I'm going to show you. It gets pretty high, almost like a dog whistle. Crazy, right? So, yeah, I mean, the follow-up to that is if you decide to play the piccolo, your parents might ask you to play in another room, and if you have dogs, they might actually leave the house. Who knows? Let's play the game.
Want to play the game? I've been waiting all week for this.
We have a game going on, and we're not sure who the winner and the loser is, but we're going to let you decide.
Who can play higher? Who's voting for the violin?
Thank you. You're my favorite. Oh. just heard how high this can go. You think she can beat me? I'm not sure about
You
that.
think I can lay high? No.
All right, we're going to start on an E, high E.
All right, that's the starting note. Ah, I'm almost at the end. I'm done.
One for the piccolo. I keep,
I'm still a winner.
she's still a winner. I keep thinking one of these times she'll find one more note because honestly, I only had one left. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Benjamin now, who's going to talk about the other woodwind instruments in the orchestra.
The violinist claims to have an extra note. We'll see about that. I've brought several things for you to handle today so you'll understand more about what we're talking about. I'll be talking a little bit more about the rest of the woodwind family and also about what makes music and what we're hearing when we hear music and how the sound, where the sound comes from. So the first thing I'm going to do is pass out this clarinet, which has no keys. Somebody took the keys off of this clarinet during World War II and donated the metal to the war effort. And it's a great representation of why we call some of these instruments woodwinds. It's actually made out of wood. So I'll pass this around to the fourth graders. And I also brought a regular old clarinet, and this is what you would play in the school band. Do we have clarinet players in the band this year? Excellent. Okay, how about flute players? Trumpet players? Saxophone players, where are you? Excellent, okay. Any drummers? No drummers. Okay, that's all right. Let me pass these out first. I'm also going to pass out some reeds for you to pass around. They're nothing fancy, so don't worry about breaking them in your hand or anything like that. Just be careful with these instruments. And we'll start here. Well, you don't have to blame them. You can pass them around for everybody to see. We'll share them, especially with the fourth graders. And I'll start this clarinet here, okay? Just pass them around. Okay, back to the show. Here we go. First of all, let's understand that every time we hear music, we're listening to vibrations. Vibrations traveling through the ear. How the vibrations are made depends on which instrument you're hearing. So we've already heard Mr. Harlick and Ms. Powers tell us that the violin bow with its little barbs is pulling across the strings, vibrating, the sounds coming up through the box of the violin, and the sounds traveling through the ear as vibrations. We also heard from Ms. Harrison that all of the brass players start their sound the same way. Put your lips together, blow lightly, but keep them tight, and off. Now, trumpet players, where are my trumpet players? Can you tell me what happens if you don't buzz your lips and blow into the horn?
What will happen is that all that there will be no noise and just
There'll be no noise, just what? Air, just air coming out. So, brass players have to buzz all the time or there's no sound. Now let's move on to Ms. Stathos's flute. I'd like you all to take the back of your hand and blow the tiniest little airstream on the back of your hand. Like it was a birthday candle and you didn't want to blow it out, just made the flame go like that. Now that little stream of air hits the inside wall of the flute and it travels like a big slinky down the flute, vibrating the sides, the metal sides of the flute, and that sound comes out of the end of the flute. And that's how that works. Now, the rest of the woodwind family needs another way to produce their sound. And if you play the clarinet or the saxophone, you will know that this wooden thing is called what? A reed. So clarinet and saxophone players, they need this single reed. And this reed's going to vibrate and bounce around. What happens when you dive off of a diving board at a swimming pool? What's the board do after you jump off? Back and forth. Well, the reed's going to do the same thing, but what I have to do as a reed player, single reed player, is to touch the reed with my tongue while I blow across it. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Take your little finger, roll some skin over your bottom teeth from your lip. Your top teeth may touch your fingernail, like so. Then you're going to draw your lips down, flick your tongue on the end of your little finger, and imagine you're saying 222 or TTT. Ready? That's all we have to do to play these single reeds, the clarinet, the alto sax. Let's see if it works. I did the same thing you did with your finger. If I stop the ear, what do you suppose happens to the sound? Anybody? Yeah. Stops. Yeah. If the reed stops vibrating, the sound stops. As long as I keep blowing, the air going over the top of the reed will make the reed keep vibrating. Until I stop or just plain run out of air. Now, the other two instruments that we've not talked about yet in the woodwind family are double reed instruments. That means they have two reeds that face each other, and then there's a little space in the middle. And they're played almost the same. Now, somebody back here told us the name of one of those instruments. The one that looks a little like the clarinet is the, say it again? No, well, that's the big one. What's the smaller one? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yes, sir, you may speak. Say it again. Say it nice and loud. Oboe. Oboe. So the oboe, which is about this long, has a double reed. The bassoon has a double reed. The way we would play the double reed's kind of simple. You do the same thing you did with your little finger for the single reed, but you have to roll some skin over your upper lip at the same time. So try that. That same 2-2-2. That's a little more difficult to do because you need a strong upper lip too. Now we're going to play a quick little game called Name That Tune. I'm going to play 4 notes and you try to guess what the song is, okay? It's pretty simple. Here we go. No ideas. 5 notes. Say it again. Old MacDonald? You do not win. How about 6 notes? Sorry, you do not win.
SpongeBob?
Sorry. How about, I must be doing something wrong. We'll try a few more notes. All right, cross your fingers. Maybe there'll be enough snow this weekend for the first snowman. Now I'd like to introduce, if I could have your attention, thank you. I would like to introduce Miss Dallin, please.
Hey, 5th graders, I'm back. Yeah. Did you expect to see me so soon? Hello, 4th graders. So, is anybody wondering, like, what I'm doing here? Yeah? Yeah? Do you think I like to hang out with Cape Ann Symphony? Really, I wanted to come back to West Parish to see if you remembered me after a week. So, I am joining. So all of you know I'm an actress. Yes, I not only direct, but I'm also an actress. And I am joining the Cape Ann Symphony for Peter and the Wolf. Does anybody have an idea what I might be doing with them? Lucas.
You're a storyteller?
Storyteller. Oh my, you are brilliant. Yes, you can tell these are theater professionals over here. Yes, I'm the narrator for Peter and the Wolf, and which he's exactly right, Lucas is right, I'm the storyteller. And all actors are storytellers. The only thing is, instead of like with the Lorax, when you were with each other, you had other actors you were doing scenes with, I get to act with the musicians and the instruments because the composer has cast the instruments as characters. So I'm going to introduce you to a few of the characters. Now the first one, the bird, you all met briefly, but let's have a more formal introduction to the bird played by the flute. You can clap, yes. So now I want to introduce you to the cat. Now, the same way Mrs. Green and I cast the Lorax, and we cast 101 Dalmatians, we looked at all the actors and thought who would be best suited to play the characters. Well, the composer did that, but did it with the instruments. So I want you guys to think about how the composer did, if he did a good job, if you think that these are the right instruments to play these characters. So the cat, everyone close your eyes. And now I want you all to meet the cat. Don't open your eyes. Don't open your eyes. Raise your hand if you think you know what character played the cat. Zachary.
Clarinet.
Clarinet, perfect. Good job. Did they do, is that a good instrument to play the cat? You think? Yes. So now we have an understudy filling in for the grandfather. Normally the bassoon plays the grandfather, but the bassoon is not here. Similar to the way Annette filled in for Michael when Michael was not here. And so we're going to have the clarinet subbing in for the grandfather. But see if you get a good idea about the character. Pretty good, much lower, right? So now the evil character in Peter and the Wolf. Who do you think that is? Odin, yes. No, it's not you, Odin, it's the wolf, no. So, everyone, let's meet the wolf. Don't be afraid. Now, normally the wolf is played by 3 French horns, but I think Mrs. Harrison does a very good scary job, right, as the wolf. So now, the hero of our story, of course, who's our hero? Peter. So let's meet Peter, and Peter is so important. He has a whole tune to himself played by the strings of the orchestra. So he has his own theme song. Wouldn't that be great to have your own theme song? Let's meet Peter. Okay, so now we have some other important characters, the hunters, and they play a very important part of the story, and I want you to meet them as well. So let's hear, and think about the character of the hunters. If you think hunters coming through the woods, this would be good character, good instrument to play the hunters. Good for hunters, right? Can you imagine them walking through the forest? Yes? So now the great thing is that the composer puts all the characters together for climactic scenes, which you know we do that in theater too. And it's great. We don't have everybody talking at the same time because everyone plays their part, right? So I wanted to skip to a climactic scene, and it's a climactic point in the story. I don't want to do a spoiler alert and tell it what it is. Do you guys know the story of Peter and the Wolf? You watched it? Okay. So it's after the wolf is captured. And imagine, just close your eyes, and imagine a triumphant procession. And there you are. So you're very well prepared for next week's concert. We'll see you next Friday, and I'm looking forward to seeing you. You'll see me. I'll be right up on stage with the orchestra, and I'm looking forward to turning the tables and telling you a story this time. So I'm looking very forward to seeing you next week. Bye.
Thank you, Heidi. We have one more piece of music on the program for you next week. We're going to play a little bit of it for you now. It was written by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. You've heard that name before, I'm sure. It was written for string quartet. A string quartet is 4 players, violin 1, violin 2, viola, and cello. But we are going to have 65 musicians on stage next week. And so we are going to play this piece next week with all of the string players as a string orchestra. Today, because we only have 2 violins, we asked our friends, the clarinet, the flute, and the French horn, to play along with us. But next week, it's only going to be strings. The name of this piece, I'm going to teach you a little German, is, repeat after me, eine kleine Nachtmusik. Very good. And that means, yes, but you speak very nice German. It means a small night music. So thank you very much for coming. We're looking forward to seeing you next week. Bye.